Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild player character supplement, the Jaeger Compendium, designed by Jackson Lewis for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Charles, Crazy Pat, and Nick. And gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcos Dude, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Auction, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. So when I think of Jaeger, well, now I think of Pacific Rim, giant robots, and all that, or I think of Jägermeister back to my college days. But in this case, Jaeger is using the literal German word which means hunter, which is a very, very cool word, Jaeger. The Jaeger Compendium offers a new character class called the Jaeger, which, from what I can tell, is a kind of hybrid between a fighter and a ranger. Now, rangers, as has often been discussed to death, are kind of the weak link of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. They just kind of have gotten shafted. A lot of the uniqueness of the ranger, I don't want to go too much on a rant about rangers, but a lot of the uniqueness of the class is a lot of their terrain features, which doesn't, a lot of times it gets ignored by DMs or doesn't factor into certain campaigns or whatever else. It just ends up not working quite as well, so you end up playing just kind of a weird, limited, if you want to play like a fighter spellcaster hybrid, like a martial one, you might as well play a paladin, versus if you want to be more of a fighter, you might as well be a fighter, that kind of thing. The Jaeger hopes to create a similar kind of tactical fighter class without relying on spells at all. There's no spell casting, so instead it is pure firearms. It is armaments, which are basically gadgets, so think like Batman or Predator, or I guess you've played like video games like Dishonored or the Deus Ex games. Like you have these abilities. You don't have spells. Well, I guess Dishonored you do, but you have like gadgets that you can use. So those are the armaments, and you also get a Slayer die, and the Slayer die it actually works similar to Bardic Inspiration. It starts out as a D4. You have two of them. You can see right here you get more of them, and they get stronger, which I believe both are true of Bardic Inspiration. And you can expend them to simply add to your damage, which is pretty big. And you get them back on a short rest. So you are dealing a lot of extra damage pretty quickly if you're leveling up solely as a Jaeger. That's decently helpful. It's not the most exciting feature, just being able to add raw damage. Still pretty fun. And I mean, they get the extra attack at 5th level. Like, they are basically fighters with this extra damage in play, which is good. But what really makes the Jaegers more interesting and unique are these armaments. And the armaments are kind of similar to Warlock Invocations, where you start off with two of them at level 2, and then every couple levels you gain another armament. So that's kind of similar to how the Warlocks gain new invocations, which those add new spells. Here, they are basically the gadgets. So picture, like Batman having things on his tool belt and having, grappling hooks and all that. You get like a bola, a net launcher, a hidden dagger. Think Assassin's Creed. A ballistic fist, a boom tube, static trap, smoke grenade as a fog cloud, a hammer of intellect, full of telekill alloy that you can use your intelligence modifier for attack and damage rolls. I really do like, that's a funny example, but I do like that the Jaeger actually uses intelligence for a lot of its stuff. In fact, if there's any saving throws, for example, you're throwing a bola or the net launcher, whatever, and they have to roll a saving throw, your save modifier is actually a proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier, which is really cool because for so many classes, intelligence is a dump stat unless you want to be able to use skills, which, granted, skills are good, but in terms of your raw abilities, I think Wizards went overboard in using charisma and wisdom as the actual ability, the attributes that most classes tend to use, whereas intelligence is really only used by the wizard. if you don't have a wizard in your party, it's very likely you do not have very good intelligence across your entire party. Now, again, people can put points in intelligence as they wish, but they're just getting skills out of it. They're not really getting any increases to their any of their class abilities. So it's really cool to see that the Jaeger actually uses intelligence. I do like that quite a bit. So that's kind of a joke with the hammer of intellect, I guess, is you can just like, look, you just use intelligence as your attack roll too. You can do that. What we also get here, which is very impressive. So I like the armaments a lot. I think they're very cool. The fact that you can add, the different abilities and turn them into like your signature style is neat. And then on top of that, at 3rd level, as is every class in D&D 5th edition, you get a subclass where you can further specialize your Jaeger. We get 9 options here, which is really crazy. I thought it was 6 at first, but it adds basically 3 at the very end. So that's, if my math is correct, that's 9 total. That's more than most classes, even if you include like Xanathar's, I believe, options that they get. So really, really cool, impressive spread here. Like the Gravewalkers, who hate the undead, their signature weapon, the Powder Keg, which is this long-range rifle. By the way, hope you're into firearms, because the Jaeger definitely uses guns. That can cause some unbalancing, but I believe guns are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they do have some balancing measures in terms of reloading and weapon jams and all that, so I think it works out. And ultimately, whatever, they can be pretty similar to bows in terms of damage. I don't think it's that unbalancing to include firearms. And it's a lot of it's their special signature weapons. So for the Gravewalkers, they get this really powerful rifle. But for the Watchmen's, that could be really good for a urban-based campaign. You get a hidden wrist crossbow, which is like a bracelet with a little pew-pew in it, and then a sword cane. So I'm thinking like Kingsman or James Bond shit, which is really fun and cool. As well as using investigation skills. I know a player from my Tomb of Annihilation campaign would appreciate some investigative skills to have on any class. So some really, really neat options that all seem really fun. They all have their own signature weapons and abilities. The freaking Hunter of Hunters, which means you're supposed to be able to hunt other hunters that have gone like too far over the edge, I guess, because you're always these dark, brooding, monster slayers. You can never be a happy-go-lucky monster slayer, I guess. You always have to be dark and brooding and scarred. These guys actually hunt the bad hunters, and their signature weapon are loyal hounds. So this is the funny attempt to re-implement pets back into the ranger archetype. I don't know how well that works. Unfortunately, it does look at first glance like the least interesting of all of them, which is probably because pets don't work quite as well in D&D 5th edition, which is unfortunate because I think they can be very fun. But here, at least when they level up, they do get to increase their proficiency bonus and hit die, which that's a little bit better. I was hoping you would actually get a little bit better abilities. You do get hound commands you can give them, but it just doesn't quite seem nearly as interesting as, say, having a freaking rifle or a hellfire fist, for example. Those are all very, very cool. So a really cool spread. This is the part that confused me at the end. These verbudente, verbund. Is it verbunde? I'm gonna try. Stop butchering that. It's something German originating. I was picturing at first when they mentioned that each guild has allies to work with that we would be seeing some NPC stat blocks that used these classes, which would be a very cool thing to add into a just a player character thing, which I wasn't going to expect, because again, if this is geared towards players, I wouldn't expect things that are for DMs in this supplement. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I guess that's what this is. But in fact, no, it is what looks like just additional guilds that you can take. They're called archetypes. In this case, a rogue, I guess kind of like a battle monk soldier kind of archetype, or a arch knight. But they just look like they're the same as the other guilds in terms of they all have their own abilities that they gain as they level up, and their own like tools. I don't think they have the signature weapons the others do, but otherwise it seems pretty similar. So they're not quite as well thought out as the first 6. So I guess you've got the 6 that all have really cool abilities as they level up. They seem fairly well balanced, except for maybe the hound one. And then these 3 at the end, which seem just kind of like bonuses that they don't quite have the signature weapons, but they still are Jaegers. They have all the other, armaments and all that kind of thing. So I think it works all really well. As you can see, as I'm looking through this thing, my only really complaint is there's no art. That you basically have this one little art here, and you've got the cover art, but there's nothing in here, and it's just kind of glaringly distracting almost that there's zero art in here. And it's, art can not necessarily make or break your product. I think good art can elevate an average piece of content, and a bad art could drag a good one down. Having no art drags this one down a little bit. The content is still really, really good though, and the actual layout, the font, the background, the presentation, all of that is done very, very well, and looks like it is a professional D&D 5th edition product, which I like to see a lot. But it's just very strange that you didn't even include some kind of like like the free resource. There's stuff out there for DM's Guild specifically to use. Just plop some of that in there for something for me to look at. Would be very helpful. All right, let's go over my quick pros and cons for the Jaeger Compendium Pro. 9 different Jaeger subclasses and guilds, most of which have their own signature weapons and abilities. That's a really, really impressive spread. Most only give us 2 or 3 different subclasses to go into, so it's really nice that we get that many options. Pro, pick and choose from over 24 fun new armaments. The Slayer die thing is fine. I think it works pretty well, and it is in keeping with the class, but it's not very exciting to use, whereas the armaments, I think, are very exciting to use. Not only do you get to pick and choose your own and really get that flavoring of whatever kind of certain archetype or class you're picturing in terms of the gadgets that you use, but I think the way they work, they all feel well balanced and very thematically appropriate. So, and the class, I want to make a comment here, is very combat heavy. I'm not including that as a con because it is a hunter class. You are a monster slayer. That's the whole point of the class. So the fact that all of your shit is basically pure combat, I think works pretty well. If it was a different kind of class that wasn't necessarily, thematically tied to combat and all of the shit was combat related, then I would have that as a complaint that there wasn't enough other stuff to do. But here, I think that does fit pretty well, and I'll allow it. Cons, as I mentioned, almost no artwork. It's only like a dozen pages long. It didn't need that much, but something, just a little bit, would have gone a long way. Final verdict, if you're looking for a more combat-heavy Ranger Fighter class, the Jaeger Compendium makes for an excellent option. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.